This video is brought to you by teacherjobfairs.org. Hello, everyone. My name is Dylan. I am the social media manager at teacherjobfairs.org.
Hi, and I'm Chris Dugan. I'm the president of teacherjobfairs.org.
And welcome to our teacherjobfairs.org Teach in China podcast. And today we're going to be talking about our teaching facts and figures. And why don't we start off with the first topic, which is our current state of teaching abroad. Why don't you get us started off with that, our first topic there?
Right, so again, focusing on facts and figures regarding teaching in China, just to give an idea of how large or the macro sense of the market, we're looking at 1.5 billion learning English worldwide currently, just to give kind of on a global basis. Again, that's 1.5 billion at
Wow,
this
that's
time
huge.
are learning English worldwide.
How many people are in the entire world, would you say?
Billions.
Billions. Okay, so let's just say if it's 1.5 billion, we're taking a huge chunk out, just learning English alone.
Yeah,
Wow.
we're taking a huge chunk out. Obviously, in some of the Asian countries, there's many billions between India and China alone. You're looking at somewhere on the order of 2.5 to 3.5 billion people in those two countries alone.
Wow.
But worldwide, 1.5 billion are learning English at this current moment.
What I've heard is there's only 250,000 native English speakers that are teaching these learners. Is that correct?
Right. So the ratios are absolutely ludicrous. I mean, you're looking at 1.5 billion, 1.5 billion, that's with a B, people that are learning English that are only taught at this time, at this very moment, by, and this is worldwide, of course, by only 250,000 native English speakers, which are currently teaching these learners. Now, just to kind of step back a second, 250,000, and when I say native, I'm talking about those that are from native English-speaking countries. We're talking about the United States, we're talking about the UK, we're talking about New Zealand, right? Ireland, South Africa, places that English is the official language, and those that speak it are from these countries originally. Just to kind of put it in context.
Okay, I see. And it looks like it's 330 million that are learning English in China at the moment?
Right. So out of this subset of this 1.5 billion that are learning English worldwide, 330, which is a considerable number of that, 330 million are from China are learning English themselves. So China, again, the numbers could be somewhere around 2 billion people or Chinese are in China, and a large percentage of them at this moment, 330 million, that with an M, are actively learning English.
Okay, so you said 250,000 native English speakers currently teaching these learners. That's worldwide. So I'm assuming that what I saw was there was only 100,000 native English speakers currently teaching these learners, but that's in China. Is that right?
Right. So one of the largest markets and one of the main markets that we focus on here at teacherjobfairs.org, besides the U.S. market, of course, working with schools here, school districts, charter schools, those types of things. Internationally, our focus country is China. And so for that, it's such a huge market. There's, as you mentioned, Dylan, the 330 million are only being taught by 100,000. And that's an approximate number. There's been different groups researching this over the last few years, but you're looking at 100,000. That's 100,000, again, native English-speaking teachers teaching 330 million. So it's just a small, literally like a stone being thrown into an ocean. That's the kind of ripple effect that 100,000 makes. So again, 330 million in China are being taught by only 100,000 teachers.
Wow, so the demand for English-speaking teachers, it's insane.
It's huge. There's, for an opportunity for a teacher, there's not many out there on this scope, on this scale, where you have an opportunity And we're going to go into the reasons why and what you need to have to be able to do this, of course. But the opportunity for you to become an English teacher in China is massive. So yeah, it's a great opportunity for those that are interested.
All right, so welcome back, and we're going to get started on the topic about what certifications you need to teach. Why don't you let us know about that?
Right. So again, we had touched on a few things about the demand for teachers and the numbers, and it's just absolutely mind-boggling if you try to wrap your mind around it, type of thing. So, but of course, like anything else, especially in teaching, as many of you teachers that are listening know, if you're from here in the United States, you know that there are barriers to entry. The great thing about it is the barriers are very low to teach, specifically in China or even around the world. And we'll go into some of those things as we discuss some of the acronyms you may have heard, and we'll kind of go through the difference between some you might have heard here in the U.S. and some that are international. So, to put some out there, one of them is known as TEFL. There's another that's known as TESOL. And in here in the United States, we're familiar with ESL. So, those are the three kind of buzz acronyms, if you will, that are involved in this whole teaching scenario when you talk about different languages.
And what was ESL? What does that stand for again?
Right. So, just a point of clarity, ESL is English as a second language. It applies to those learning English in a multicultural setting in their own country. So, many schools, say here in the United States, have ESL programs. They have ESL teachers. Some states like California, you have to have a certification to be able to teach, and many other states like New York and others, same thing as well. But the difference here is that when we talk about ESL, we're really talking about a teaching program in your own country. So for the purposes of our discussion, when we talk about teaching in China, we're not going to be talking about ESL because it doesn't apply. What does apply is TEFL, which is teaching English as a foreign language, and TESOL, which is teaching English to speakers of other languages.
I heard there was another additional acronym. Which one was that one?
Right. So there's another one, and I'll go into the TEFL and TESOL a little bit further, so the listeners understand. But the other additional one is IELTS. IELTS is International English Language Testing System, and this one is really key because this whole thing about teaching internationally and specifically teaching in China, many of it or most of it really revolves around the young student, the student that's going to go ahead and grow as part of this huge Chinese economy. They're going to be eventually part of making it better and greater. And one of the issues or one of the things that happens along the way is that many of those learners want to come to the United States or want to learn or be educated in an English-speaking country such as the UK, such as the United States, such as South Africa. And to attend the universities in those countries, they have to be English proficient. It's like anything else. If you wanted to go to Spain and learn Spanish, but you wanted to attend a university learning math there, you would have to understand the basics of Spanish at least to be able to understand what you're learning in the subject of math. So IELTS, as I just mentioned, International English Language Testing System, is the testing system that the students take as they're learning English to be able to enter a U.S., let's say, university to study any subject here in the United States.
And that's required to go ahead and do that, or no?
Yeah, most of the universities and colleges here in the United States require that they take IELTS because then they know that student. So now this is somebody who is learning in China, comes over to the United States to learn and attend a university like UCLA, USC, NYU, those types of places. The university knows not only are they an educated candidate, but they also will be able to learn the subject matter that they're going to be getting their degree in, let's say here in the United States, in the English language, which of course is how it's taught here.
Okay, so why don't we talk a little bit about the requirements to teach? How about you tell me about that?
Right. So stepping back a little bit about TEFL. TEFL is a certification to teach in China. The government requires that you have a 120-hour TEFL. Now, there's a misnomer with TEFL and also with TESOL as far as how you get the degree. You do not have to go to a physical school to do it. Some of the schools in China that we work with, they will have you take TEFL or TESOL when you arrive. We have some really sharp go-getter type candidates that decide, you know what, I'm waiting for my visa. In some cases, some of the candidates don't have a passport. That's okay. You can get a passport while you're going through this process with us, with one of the schools that we work with in China. But you can get, and you can also earn your 120-hour TEFL or TESOL certificate during that time, which is great. And we've heard that some of the candidates have said, well, I heard that it's thousands of dollars to go to school. You do not have to go to a physical school. There are schools out there, but the amount of money is absolutely ludicrous. The best way to do TEFL is to do either do it when you arrive. The schools will pay for it in China, or you go ahead and do it here in the United States, and you can knock out a 120-hour TEFL program quickly. I've heard candidates do it in as little as 10 days, sometimes 2 weeks. Anyway, not to get hung up on that, because it's obviously one of the steps, but it's not anything that slows you down or stops you. And the pricing we've seen as low as $39 for the whole program.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, some people have heard it's in the hundreds. We know of programs that you can do it for $39, so it's very inexpensive.
And now we're going to talk a little bit about the information and common misconceptions about teaching in China. So, what are those? Why don't you tell me about that?
Right. So again, as we discussed, the key things are to teach in China. The barriers are very low. I mentioned the TEFL TESOL. It's a 120-hour certificate. The only other really big deal about the whole process is you need to have at least a bachelor's degree. That's required by the Chinese government. So again, you need a degree, just a bachelor's. If you have a master's, great. I mean, that's even better. But you need a bachelor's degree, and you need to have either when you arrive or before you leave to get a TEFL or TESOL certifications. Simple stuff. So the misconceptions, as you say, Dylan. A lot of candidates think that they're going to be either staying over there for a number of years, or they can go for 2 weeks and be on vacation, or that kind of thing. Basically, most of the schools, we have some schools that we work with that they even have 10-month contracts. Most of the contracts that you'll see are 1 year. Excuse me, there's some others that have 2 years. And the great thing about it, and I'll go into the different points, but the great thing about it is you get more benefits when you go into a 2 year, because the school sees that you're making a commitment to stay on longer, so they increase not only your pay for the second year, but also for benefits. And then you do get other bonuses as well, like reimbursements for travel and things like that. And in many cases, some of the schools will go ahead and also have you take on other roles. We've had candidates that have gone on to become head of schools or even principals. With a lot of the schools opening, as I mentioned, you're talking about an amount of 330 million of those Chinese that are learning English. That number is expanding all of the time. Again, the numbers are really ludicrous as far as how much the growth is for learning English. There's many opportunities for these teachers to go on and run their own school as some of these school systems are expanding. The one major thing and a misconception, and this is something that I would like everybody to take note of, is you don't have to be a teacher in the U.S. to be a teacher in China. So ideally, you'd have 2 years of experience, of general experience, not necessarily teaching. If you've taught in Sunday school, if you've helped out at a nursery, or helped out at some kind of kindergarten, or
What about volunteering time?
volunteering,
Is
exactly.
that also?
Thank you. Yeah, exactly. If you work with a nonprofit, even on your personal time, or time that you donated to your organization that you're part of as part of some kind of program, that's all kinds of great opportunities to have engaged children and young adults. But you only need 2 years of general work experience, okay? And the other big, huge thing is you don't need an English or an education degree. Again, you don't need to be a teacher here in the United States to teach in English.
So what, Bachelor's of Arts, that works type of thing?
Bachelor of Arts works great. Works great. Even math. You can have a Bachelor of Science, Bachelor of Arts. Either way, it doesn't matter what the necessary discipline in is. As long as you have a bachelor's degree, it doesn't have to be in education. It doesn't have to be in English, as I mentioned. But you need to have a bachelor's degree.
Right. Okay. That's perfect.
So, and the other thing is, we hear a lot of people, they contact us. Oh, I'm so old. I can't do this. I want to do it, but I'm too old. Well, we will say, and you can check this, and you can Google it and those types of things. But there are ceilings, I guess you could say, on the high end and low end for teachers for China. China has something called a Z visa. To teach in China, it caps the age at 60, but there are exceptions. And there's different types of terminal, if you will, professional. We could use the term bending the policies, I guess. China does allow for certain ways around it when you have somebody who is an expert in a particular area.
Right.
And we've seen teachers come in as old as 70 years old because they have a specific background that the Chinese government needs as far as teaching in China.
Right.
So again, to reiterate, we're talking about both young and old. On the young side, you're looking at those that are 1 to 2 years or just out of college, because those 2 years of experience they might have had doing internships or during their summers. All that adds up together towards that 2 years. So if you're a 21, 22-year-old just coming out of college, you would be okay to get into teaching in China. It's not a problem. And then on the high end, again, they cap it at 60, but if you're 62 or 63, it might not be an issue, just because, again, your background may lend very easily, and the government would give a waiver because of your particular specialization.
That's great. Okay, so why don't we talk about the schools that you could teach at in China? Tell me about that.
Yeah, great point. There's a few different opportunities. When you hear teach in China, it's kind of a general term, if you will, or saying, or however. But specifically, there's different types of schools. First of all, there's international schools. There's many international schools that teachers that we work with teach with. We have many international schools that we work with in China. You can see some of their videos on our YouTube channel. You can go ahead and see some of their banners on our website, and you can see information about them in our newsletters. So international schools are typically K through 12. You're focusing on a different subject. Could be English, could be math, could be whatever particular area that maybe your background lends to. But that international school, in many cases, prestigious, and again, covers the K through 12 realm. One other area, and specifically kind of in that same trajectory, is university. The one good and bad thing about a university is you can teach, and in most cases it's just English. You're teaching English at the university. Now, these are obviously university students, various ages, but the nice thing about that is you get housing on campus. Housing with the different universities that we work with is included. And besides your salary, the only downside with universities is you're not teaching as many hours. So for somebody who says, you know what, I don't want to really have a difference in how much money I'm making here in the United States versus what I'm making over there, of course, you're going to take a little bit of a hit, teaching in China, because the cost of living is much less in China. So your money, and you can look at the ratios through any website out there comparing the United States, a particular city versus Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, and those types of things, where you'll see that your money that you'll earn will be 2x what it is here in the United States, your purchasing power. So, but the problem with universities is you teach there, you're probably only teaching maybe 25 hours a month.
Okay.
A week, 20 to 25 hours a week. And for some, that might not bring in as much for their salary as if they taught an international school, or in many cases a training center. A training center is very nice too, and again, our partners With training centers, they include either a housing allowance or an apartment.
What is a training center, by the
Yeah,
way?
a training center it's kind of one of those scenarios where it's typically like it starts up on like a Thursday evening, Friday, all day Saturday, Sunday. You still get your days off. You might have off on Monday and Tuesday, but which is kind of nice in China because it's a very busy place and it's nice to be able to maybe have days off that are a little asynchronous, if you will, from the rest of the population. But it's almost like a tutoring scenario on one hand. Again, you're teaching typically 7 year olds to 17 year olds, and you're teaching them in subject matters in English, obviously, and we have training centers that we work with that do everything from sports to the National Geographic learning systems, where they're learning about the American culture, American history, things like that. And for the training centers, you're basically teaching that group to strengthen their English, of course, and then also teaching them a lot about America or other countries around the world that are English speaking dominant.
This video is brought to you by teacherjobfairs.org.